Since I was born, I have spent my summers adventuring along the St. Lawrence River. My grandparents have owned a house on the river since 1986, so it has always been a tradition for my extended family to spend the summer there, together. Ask any of the Mothersbaugh grandkids for their favorite place, and we would all respond with the river. I firmly believe nothing bad would or even ever could happen at the river. That is, until the summer of 2008. I was awakened by my father early in the morning to partake on yet another fishing expedition during the first week of August 2008. Sluggishly, I threw on an old sweatshirt and my soccer shorts and proceeded to our living room. This morning, the only fishermen ready to go out are me, my dad, my poppy, my Grammy, and my Uncle Jimmy. As we all began to file outside, my dad turned to my uncle and asked, "Jimmy, are you feeling all right?" His response was a short, "Yeah." Outside, the air was cool along the river shore. For many, the smell of river in the morning is far from ideal. However, to me, it's familiar and comforting. I climbed aboard the old Grady White and took my seat in the front. Usually my pap is the captain of his boat, but he and my Nana went back to Pennsylvania for the day, so my dad took over. The Grady White chugged its way out of its house between the docks, and we were sent off with waves from my mother and sister, and from my Uncle Jimmy's family, his 2 young children and his wife. In the front of the boat, I enjoyed all the benefits, keeping an eye out for fish, with the cool morning wind sweeping against my face. Over the roaring sound of the motor, seagulls perched on the tiny islands scattered across the river can still be heard squawking. About 20 minutes after departure, we arrived at our destination. Once the ripples from the boat subsided, and we came to a complete stop, I was able to see fish again. The St. Lawrence River is known for its crystal clear water in some spots, and on beautiful days, like this one, I could see every distinct piece of the river floor. My dad got my fishing pole hooked up, as well as my Grammy and Poppy's, and we began to fish. Within 30 minutes, my dad had the first fish of the day on his line. I took my job as net girl quite serious, so I dropped my own pole and ran to the back of the boat. Once my dad's bass was netted, I went over to my Uncle Jimmy's side of the boat to fill up the fish well with water. The fish well was located under a seat, and in order to fill it, I needed to lift the seat and pull out the plug. As I started to lift the seat, it came to a stop. My Uncle Jimmy's backside was in the way. He was seated on the ledge of the boat, feet hanging over the side, almost in the water, with a fishing pole in hand. Politely, I said, "Excuse me." No response. Once again, louder and less polite, I said, "Excuse me, Uncle Jimmy." No response. Frustrated and in a hurry, I pulled up on the seat harder, bumping into my uncle. I turned away to get back into the fish-catching action. My Grammy and Poppy laughed as I tried to pick up the slippery floppy bass from the boat floor and place it in the well. With a splash and a bang, the fish made it to the well and the seat shut. I looked up to a concerned stare coming from across the boat and looking past me. My dad spoke to his brother-in-law and could not get a response. At the same time, my dad and I walked over to investigate and immediately noticed something wrong in my uncle's face. My dad yelled for his father to help, and somehow they were able to safely bring this 200-plus pound man back around into the boat and onto a seat. It was then my Grammy, a nurse, realized Uncle Jimmy was having a seizure. As my dad drove the boat, I was in charge of keeping my uncle's head still, while my Grammy and Poppy held down the rest of him. Once we got Uncle Jimmy into a position we could contain him, my dad began the journey back to the river house. Since we were fishing in Canadian waters, we could not legally dock our boat on any of the land nearby, so we were forced to take the 20-minute route back. We made it back to the dock, and I ran upstairs to inform my family of the incident. Everyone jumped into action frantically, and an ambulance arrived shortly after. I tried to keep my uncle's 2 young children, ages 6 and 9, calm, while their father was taken away. About 20 years prior to this August day, Jimmy Mothersbaugh made the decision to get into a car full of friends who had been drinking, including the driver. The car accident that resulted left 1 passenger dead and the rest in serious condition. Jimmy died 3 times before he was finally stabilized. Doctors told him that because of his severe brain trauma, he could end up having serious issues later on in life. I was 12 years old during this incident, and even though my family told me of my Uncle Jimmy's story before, I never really understood why it was such a big deal. I mean, he is alive. He can walk, talk, laugh, and dance. Basically anything he wants. It wasn't until that moment on the boat, holding my uncle's head while he had no control over his body, that I finally understood the big deal. My Uncle Jimmy was treated, released, and brought back to the family like nothing had even happened. The impact that August day had on me, however, was not as simple. For so many young adults, life seems infinite, like nothing bad could ever happen. We're all just indestructible. Luckily, or not so luckily, I came out of this experience knowing how risky that mindset is. Throughout high school and even now at college, I think. I think about the consequences, and most importantly, I think about how my actions will affect the people closest to me.